Hi, welcome to the Dissertation and Thesis Format Workshop. My name is Trina Ellerts, and I'm part of the Graduate Academic Affairs team that handles the formatting of dissertations and theses as preparation for graduation. There will be a recording of this workshop available on our website, graduate.ucr.edu, and you can access that using this QR code that's on the screen right here. You can also go directly to our website, hover over current students, and click on dissertation and thesis format resources, and you will find a lot of information, including the download of these slides and other resources that will be useful for you in this process. This is the Graduate Academic Affairs team. Amanda Wong handles last names A through H. I handle last names I through P, and Jessica handles last names Q through Z. You can reach us Monday through Friday from 8 to noon and 1 to 5 using the number that you see on this screen. Someone is always available to answer that phone. If you get the machine or the voicemail, that means that we are either on the phone or with another student. And if you leave a message, we'll get back to you promptly. The purpose of this workshop is to provide information about the formatting of your document and the steps that are involved for graduation. Again, we're a team of 3, and we handle the last names as shown here. Here's some general resources that you can use as you're working to finish the dissertation. The Graduate Success Program, specifically the Graduate Writing Center, offers by request programming as well as writers' workshops. They also will meet with you individually to go through your writing and give you suggestions on how to improve the context and the sequence of your chapters. They are familiar with the format guide and the way that we recommend that the format be presented, but that expertise really is in our office, Graduate Academic Affairs, rather than in Graduate Success. The Counseling Center offers wellness circles in conjunction with the Graduate Student Association every third Thursday, according to this information here. But there's also more information on the counseling website as shown if you wanted to explore some of the other resources that they provide specifically for graduate students. And then, of course, the GSA, Graduate Student Association, offers a lot of resources specifically for grad students, including travel grants, GSHIP information, other basic needs, and diversity and inclusion resources. So feel free to visit these websites for more information. So at this time in the workshop, I'd like to talk to you about document style. The first rule is that the format must conform to the graduate division's requirements. If you're watching this workshop, you've probably already downloaded the format guide, but here is the direct link to that format guide. It has all the information included in it that you need to know. This workshop does not talk about everything that's in the format guide. We've tried to maximize your time by highlighting the things that are most common for students as a group. And so reading through the format guide is a good idea to get your bearings on other individual things that might pertain specifically to you. Style is at the discretion of your committee. You might choose to use MLA or APA or another style manual as a guide, but you should be careful because these guides don't always match the graduate division requirements. There are some certain specific things that we ask for to be consistent throughout. So style is at the discretion of you and your committee, but please do review the format requirements for specific information. Many students ask about scientific format or journal format, which is absolutely fine. This is where each chapter is a separate paper. You have to have a general introduction and conclusion. That's the requirement that the graduate division asks for. And then you need to be consistent. So if each of those papers that you're combining together, you've used different styles to create those papers, you'll have to go through and decide what style you want to use for each chapter, for all of the chapters together, so that the entire dissertation or thesis is consistent throughout. So that might include an abstract that you included in each chapter. So like say you have 3 chapters and 2 of them have an abstract, but one doesn't. You'll need to modify that one that doesn't to include an abstract or remove the abstracts from the other 2 chapters to be consistent. That is specifically what we're discussing. So let's talk about format. This is a little bit more specific as to what pages we are going to ask you to present in your dissertation. So the first 3 that I want to talk about are the title page, the copyright page, and the signature approval page. The next couple of slides are examples of those specific documents. Here's what the title page should look like. This is an example that you can find on our website, as well as in the format guide, and then of course in the slides that you can download from our website. So everybody's title page is going to look pretty much the same. There is required information that we ask you to provide and required spacing that you need to use on your title page. So let's start looking at those items here. First of all, the University of California, Riverside is at the top in all capital letters. Your dissertation title is next, and it is single space, just like University of California, Riverside was at the top. Then you're going to have information here about a dissertation or thesis submitted in partial satisfaction of the requirements for the degree of, and that is also single spaced. Then you'll put information here about your degree objective. So many of you are PhD students, but we also do have master's students that submit a thesis as their capstone requirement. So you would replace Doctor of Philosophy here with Master of Arts or Master of Science, depending on what program you're in. We also have a thesis option for the Master of Business Administration. So there are lots of ways that this could be listed. You're going to next list your major here. That's not always the same as the name of your department. A couple of options that I can think of are, for example, the Department of Physics and Astronomy offers a degree in physics. So your major here might be different than what the name of your department is. Another example is the Department of the History of Art offers a degree program in art history. So the best way to check this is to look at your degree audit because it will show you the exact name of your major. Next, you're going to list your first, middle, and last name on your document. This is a little bit variable because UCR does allow students to use a preferred or a lived name instead of a legal name. So you might have an individual situation here. If your name is, for example, Jonathan Smith, but you prefer your preferred name or your lived name is John Smith, as long as that preferred name is listed with the registrar's office, you certainly can use it here on your title page. So depending on your situation, you might find that you are not listing necessarily your legal name here on the front page or the title page of your document. The key here is that preferred name needs to be listed with the registrar's office. So if you have a middle name and you've listed it with the registrar, we ask you to include it here so that we can match your document with your particular record. You're also going to list the month and the year of the completion of your degree. So this is not necessarily the month and the year of the completion of your dissertation or thesis. It's the month and the year of the quarter that you're graduating. And we only confer degrees 4 times a year: fall, winter, spring, and summer. So you'll either list December, March, June, or September on your document, depending on which quarter you graduate. And then finally, you'll list your dissertation committee on your title page, and that will be single spaced. And then you'll list who the chairperson is of your committee. If you have co-chairs, you'll indicate co-chairperson after each of those people's names. So again, this is going to be something that matches pretty much every student is going to look exactly like this. And then the things that are circled here in red are the things that are going to be variable for each student. Of course, the title of your document is also going to be variable. So that's the example of the title page. And again, you can download a sample from our website. We also have a template that you can download that's for Word. So you can just fill in the information that pertains to you for the title page, and the formatting is already all set up. The second page that I want to show you is the copyright page. This is actually a optional page, but it is something that we recommend that every person has, because this is where you are basically announcing to the world that this is your work and you are the author and you hold the copyright to this information. And this is regardless of whether you've published part or all of your dissertation or thesis in another place. This is still your work, and you want to announce that you hold the copyright to the writing and the information that you've included in the document. So your first, middle, and last name will be listed the same way that you did on the title page. So if you're using your preferred name, you just want to make sure that it matches in all the different spots. And then here, instead of listing the month and the year, you're just going to list the year. The month isn't necessary on this particular page. And then the third page you're going to include in your document is the signature approval page. We are no longer requiring that students get wet signatures on this page, but we do require that you include this page in your document to represent the page that those folks would have signed. So again, you're not required to get wet signatures on this page, but this represents the signatures that will come to us via rGrad. You don't have to put any names on this page except for your own. And again, that will match the information that you included on those other two pages that we already looked at. So however you listed your name on the title page and the copyright page, you will also list here on the signature approval page. And if you have more than one chairperson, you're going to list them on the last two lines. So it would say committee co-chairperson on this last line, and then the second to the last line would say also committee co-chairperson. Again, you don't write the names of your committee members here, you just represent where their signatures would be. And then if you have more than three committee members, you will represent them by adding additional lines for them theoretically to sign. One thing that I do want to point out on those 3 pages that we just looked at, is that none of them have page numbers on them. All 3 of them are included in the pagination of the document, but they are not labeled in any way with page numbers. So as you see here on my list, the title page, the copyright page, and the signature approval page are counted in the pagination, but they are not labeled in your document. Next, let's talk about some of the next preliminary pages. The first 2 are optional. So the acknowledgements and the dedications pages, they are optional, but I usually see students having these pages in their document because, of course, there are a lot of people that you want to acknowledge as far as the progress that you made in your degree program, the people that oversaw your research, other people in your life that provided additional support. So that's what the acknowledgements page is for. And then the dedication is a more personal thing that you might want to dedicate to one very special person, people, animal, support person, whatever it is in your life. So those 2 pages are counted in the pagination and are labeled. So if you do choose to include the acknowledgements and dedication, you need to start labeling page lowercase Roman numeral 4 on whatever page that you begin with. Let's just assume that you're going to have both acknowledgements and dedication. Your acknowledgements page may be more than 1 page. So let's say maybe the acknowledgements is 2 pages. So it would be lowercase Roman numeral 4 and 5. And then the dedication would be lowercase Roman numeral 6, and then the abstract would be lowercase Roman numeral 7, etc. So in other words, start labeling whatever page is lowercase Roman numeral 4 and continue that way throughout the preliminary section of your document. Like I said, most students do choose to include an acknowledgements page or section and a dedication, although they aren't required. This also is a common question about the acknowledgements. If you have previously published material in your document, this would be the place to include information about that. So let's say chapter 2 is a reprint of an article that you published previously. You would put that information in the acknowledgement section. Chapter 2 is a reprint of material that included in such and such a journal. And there is wording available to you in the format guide that will give you some more information about how to put that together. But that is up to you. As an aside, we no longer require a form called acknowledgement of previously published material. That's something that we used to ask for, but now we leave it up to you to acknowledge those chapters accordingly. And since you may have co-authors of that material, it'd be very important for you to include that in the acknowledgement section. So after the acknowledgements and dedication, you'll have an abstract page. It may be more than one page. You are limited to 350 words or 2,450 characters. And that's usually about 2 pages. So, the rest of this page and one more page. Notice that this person has labeled this page lowercase Roman numeral 6, which means that they had a 1-page acknowledgement and a 1-page dedication section that was included prior to this page. So similarly to the other pages where your name is listed, you will have your first, middle, and last name listed on this page, and they should match the information that you included on those other pages where your name is listed. You're going to list your major, the month and year of your degree, and then the chairperson or co-chairpersons of your dissertation committee. And then you'll start the abstract down below. Like I said before, 350 words or 2,450 characters is what ProQuest is looking for. We don't truncate the document at all, but you will copy and paste this information into your ProQuest account, and they will truncate if you go over this limit. So be sure that you are following that rule when it comes to the document itself. I already talked about the page number and the word character limit. So those are just some items to pay careful attention to. Then the last part of the preliminary section will be your table of contents, which is required. Your list of figures, tables, abbreviations, symbols, etc. Those are all separate lists. So if you have figures and tables and abbreviations and symbols in your document, you will have separate lists for each of those items. And then a preface or foreword is optional. If you have some particular story that you want to tell about how you came to study this information, or a story behind a archaeological dig site that you visited or something like that, that's where you will include that in the preliminary section. And again, that's optional. I don't see a lot of preface or forewords, but they are there sometimes, and that would be included in the preliminary pages of your dissertation. One thing I also want to point out here is that the abstract page is only required for PhDs, but ProQuest will ask master students for an abstract as well, so you might as well include that information in your document. It's good practice for professional papers. PhDs must provide an abstract. So those are all the preliminary pages. This section is numbered with lowercase Roman numerals, and it does follow the margin specifications of the document, which I'm going to talk about in just a few minutes. So this is a great page to review if you need to get familiar with what your preliminary page sections would look like. So next I want to talk about the document body itself. These are some suggestions that we have for putting the document together. I'll talk about the pagination and the three separate sections in a moment, because that really has to do with making your PDF be ready for submission to ProQuest. I do want to point out that all of your margins in the entire document must be 1.5 inches on the top and the left, 1 inch on the bottom and the right. That includes your preliminary section and all of the pages that have text or figures or tables or anything on them. So any tables and figures must also fit within those margin specifications. I'm going to talk about widows and orphans on the next slides. We do ask that you remove these as much as possible. I'm going to show you some examples of figures, tables, and captions and how those fit within the margin requirements, the font size, double spacing, and use of color. So that's the information that I'm going to talk about in the next couple of slides. Here's an example of what a widow looks like. So a widow is considered to be one line at the top of the page that might belong with the previous section. We would really rather see additional space at the bottom of the previous page than having one line all by itself at the top of this page. So for this student, page 73 had a long quote, and most of the long quote appeared on that previous page. And this one just kind of dropped over to the next side, the next page. So we would ask this student to push an additional line to page 74 so that this line didn't appear on the page all by itself. So that's what a widow is. And like I said, to avoid a widow, we want to see 2 lines of text at the top of the page instead of just one. This is a little bit different of an example. It's the end of a paragraph that might have had those last 4 words at the top of the page. We asked the student to push the rest of one more line of the paragraph over to this page so that those 4 words wouldn't be listed all by themselves. Here's an example of an orphan heading. Orphans can be different things, but most often they are headings that are left alone down there at the bottom of the page all by themselves when they belong with the next section. So in this case, we would ask the student to push that heading over to the next page. Word does a pretty good job of selecting these and fixing them for you, but every so often it won't find them. So avoiding an orphan heading is as easy as putting some extra space at the bottom of the page so that the heading appears at the top of the next page with the section that it refers to. So next, let's talk about figures and captions. There are lots of ways to put figures and captions together. They can be at the end of the entire document, at the end of each chapter, or embedded within the text so that they appear as close to the text that they refer to as possible. That's really up to you, but there are rules for how they have to appear as far as margins and page numbering is concerned. So let's take a look at that. So first rule is not to split a table. So this particular student has their tables and figures embedded in the text, and that's fine as long as the table appears all on the same page together. So in this case, we would ask the student to push the table to the top of page 23 so that it appears all together instead of split across pages in this manner. We also ask that you not separate captions from figures. So especially if they're embedded within text, we want to see the entire caption together with the figure so that the reader doesn't have to jump over a page to read all of the information about a particular figure. In this case, it would be difficult for the figure and the caption to appear on the page together. So we would either ask that figure 30 start at the top of page 64, which may be a little awkward depending on how large the figure is, or perhaps the figure and the caption should appear on a page all by itself so that it's easier for the reader to see it all at one time. Oh, here's a good example of a figure that's correctly embedded within the text. There's text above and text below. The caption appears right below the figure, and it's easy to see what the figure is referring to. But it doesn't always work out that way because sometimes you might have a large piece of data that you're trying to show to your reader and it takes up a lot of space. So this is an example of a figure and a caption on a page without text. So if you have a very large figure or table with quite a bit of caption information, it's probably a good idea to try to place the figure and the caption on a page by itself. You could have text on page 104 and text on page 106, but it isn't practical to try to have the caption and table embedded in the text itself. Finally, you might have a figure and a caption, or a table and a caption that has so much information that it's really not possible to include it all on one page. In that case, you would need to place the figure on one page and the caption on the next page. So in this example, it's a figure and a caption. If this was a table and a caption, the table would normally appear below the caption. So you would flip-flop where the text is. So again, if this was a table, the caption normally appears above the table, but figures, the caption appears below the figure. And that's outlined in the format guide as well. In this example, the student has chosen to present the table in landscape style instead of portrait style, which makes complete sense because the table is best viewed lengthwise. But in this case, we also ask that the margins remain portrait style and the page number remain portrait style. So as you see here, the caption is above the table. There's some extra information that's included, a legend included below the table. And that's just fine, but the student had to move things around so that the margins and the page number remained portrait style. We do have a template on our website for this, so if you need a little bit of extra help creating this kind of view, you can use our template that you can download from our website. So I talked about the things that are on this slide. I do want to point out that as we're looking at text, you're seeing that double spacing is required for almost everything. There are some exceptions. We talked about the preliminary section where there is some single spacing involved. Captions of figures and tables are generally single spaced. Footnotes are generally single spaced. There are some other exceptions that are shown in the format guide, but for the most part, your text, your main body of text will be double spaced. Regarding type size, 10, 11, or 12-point font is perfectly fine, and often you'll use smaller text in tables and figures to show other data. We don't have any very specific recommendations on font style. Any legible font is fine as long as it's not too squirrely and is easy for a reader to, for anyone to read. You can also use color. As some of my examples showed, color is often needed to represent specific data, but you don't have to use color if it's not your preference. Finally, I do want to point out that pagination might be difficult because there are 3 separate sections of your document that you're going to include, and sometimes it's difficult to make that page number sequence work. So if you're having trouble with that, you can separate your document into 3 different sections. One with no numbers, those first 3 pages that have no number labeling. Then your preliminary section that has lowercase Roman numeral labeling, which starts with lowercase Roman numeral 4. And then the main body of your text where you'll start numbering starting with 1. So no matter where your preliminary section ends, say it ends on page lowercase Roman numeral 23, you'll still start your introduction or chapter 1 or whatever the first page of your main body of text. You're going to start with regular number 1. So the numbering doesn't continue from the preliminary section, it starts over with regular numerals. Here are some other resources for formatting. As I pointed out earlier, if you hover over current students on our webpage and then click on dissertation and thesis filing resources, this is the link directly to that website, and this QR code will take you there as well. This is where you can find information or a template for portrait style page numbers and margins on a landscape page. This is where you can find information about pagination, and we have some templates there for you to use. Regarding LaTeX, we do not provide support for LaTeX. There are lots of online support sites, and Grad Success has some resources by consultation through GradQuant. So if you're somebody that uses LaTeX, feel free to do that, but we don't currently have any resources for LaTeX because we don't have an expert here in our Graduate Academic Affairs office. So I just want to point that out, but you are more than welcome to use LaTeX if that's what you're comfortable with. So at this point, I'm going to turn things over to Jessica to talk a little bit more about how to submit your document to ProQuest and the general information that we need in order for you to graduate.
Thank you for that first portion of the presentation, Trina. Hello, everyone. My name is Jessica Renteria, and I will be taking over the second portion of the presentation. Okay, so now that we know how to format the dissertation, let's talk about how to submit it, as well as other requirements for graduation. In order to graduate, you need to be advanced to candidacy. That happens slightly different for master's and PhD students. Here are some QR codes that you can scan to see the different advancement procedures for master's and PhD. For PhD students, advancement means that you have completed all your coursework, you've passed your written and oral qualifying exams, and you are advanced to candidacy. Some might refer this to ABD status, or all but dissertation. For master students, this means that you have submitted the application for candidacy for a master's degree by Friday of week 3 of the quarter that you plan to graduate in. Please make sure to review the posted deadlines for the quarter that you intend to graduate in. The application for candidacy is submitted via RGrad. If you're on the thesis track for your master's degree, the application for candidacy petition will also trigger the nomination of your committee. This will be completed all in one petition. If your committee changes, you'll need to submit the committee change petition in RGrad, and that goes for master's and PhD student committee changes. In order to graduate, you also need to have an approved dissertation or thesis committee. Lastly, you need to be a student. That means you're either paid, enrolled in 12 units, or are on filing fee status. Now let's talk about filing fee status. It's a limited student status where you are not enrolled in any units and you're basically just finishing up your final defense, thesis, or dissertation. Filing fee is not required for everyone, so it may not be the best option for everyone. For example, if you are on filing fee, you cannot be employed as a TA or GSR because that requires enrollment of at least 12 units. Filing fee can only be used one time, and it costs half of the student services fee. The current cost of filing fee status is $209. Filing in the summer. Filing in the summer can be confusing. Sometimes it's free and sometimes it requires enrollment. So if you're planning on graduating in the summer, these are your requirements. Summer completion does not require enrollment or payment of fees unless there are one or more quarters of non-enrolled status during the previous academic year. What that means is if you were on leave of absence, ready to enroll status, or inactive student status during the academic year that you plan on graduating in, then you are required to either utilize filing fee status or you need to be enrolled in 2 units of 297 or 299 in the 10-week summer session. Summer session tuition rates vary, so you can visit the link provided to see the cost for the summer session. Okay. Filing procedures. Here's a basic checklist of what you'll need to do in order to graduate. You can use the QR code on this slide to get to the ProQuest ETD website or visit our dissertation and thesis submission site that you saw earlier to find the link. The first step there is to submit your document for format review, and that needs to be submitted via ProQuest by 5 p.m. on the posted deadline. Please make sure to review posted deadlines on the Graduate Division website. You'll be asked a number of questions about your publishing options and ordering copies, and those are decisions that you'll need to make at the time that you're uploading for format review. Once you upload and submit that, then we will try to respond to you as soon as we can, and that will be through the ProQuest system. Our turnaround time is about 48 to 72 hours, but it could be longer during the deadline date. Filing procedures. Step 2 is to submit the required paperwork, so that consists of your final defense and your signature approval page. There are also 2 surveys for PhD students. The last step is to upload the final version of your dissertation. So you'll go back to the ProQuest account that you created when you uploaded for your format review, and you replace the draft PDF with the final version of your dissertation. Here are the procedures for the final defense and the signature approval page. The final defense form is submitted electronically through RGrad, and you can find the link to that on our website. We do not require hard copies of these forms with wet signatures. RGrad takes care of that for us. We only accept the signatures via RGrad. No other method is permitted. And another note, it is just to be aware that your electronic dissertation, you'll be adding a blank version of the signature page. The one in your document will have the signature lines and your name and all that stuff, but it won't actually have the signatures of your committee members. See the sample in the format guide. So here's some more information about the final defense. It is required for almost all PhD programs. History is the only exception. It is required for most master's programs as well. If you're not sure if that's a requirement for you, you can check your degree audit in our web. If there is a final defense item on your audit, then the defense is required. If that is required for you, the final defense must be completed by the final filing deadline. And just remember that the final defense form and the signature approval page are two separate items. So if a final defense is required for you, you'll need to submit both the final defense form and the signature approval page. The final defense is approving of your final oral presentation, and the signature approval page is approving of your final written document. Copyright permission. Copyright permission refers to any material that you may be using in your dissertation that you do not hold the copyright to and that you may need to get permission in order to use in your document. So we have some resources for you on our website. Those resources will hopefully help you determine whether or not you need to get permission, and if you do, how to go about getting that permission. Thank you. I'll now be handing the presentation over to my colleague Amanda, who will be taking care of the final portion.
Alrighty, thank you, Jessica. So now let's talk about how to actually submit your document in ProQuest. But before we go out to the ProQuest site, let's talk a little bit about where your document is going to end up once you submit it. So it's going to be in 3 places. It will be in the ProQuest database of theses and dissertations. It will also go to the UCR library. So there will be a Scotty entry of your dissertation, and that will actually link back to ProQuest. And lastly, it will go to eScholarship, which is the UC-wide institutional repository, and that is an open access database. Some more things to consider here before you actually submit your document in ProQuest are these publication considerations. So some of these decisions you're going to have to make at the time that you're uploading your document for format review. So for example, do you need to embargo your document? That basically means, do you need to delay the release of your document? You'll also have the opportunity in ProQuest, which I'll show you, to apply a Creative Commons license to your document. Is that something that would be valuable to you? And there are some other things there to consider as well. We do recommend that you talk to your advisor about these things, so you can be sure that you're making the appropriate decision for both yourself and maybe other people that having your document published may affect as well. So now we're going to go to the ProQuest website, and you're able to get there from our website that Trina showed you earlier. So if you go to current students and dissertation and thesis submission, you'll see right here there's a link to the ProQuest website. So this is basically what you'll see after you create your account. And these are just some basic instructions about what you'll need to have on hand as part of the submission process. Next, it's going to ask you about publishing options. So you'll see that there's the traditional publishing and the open access publishing. The main difference being that in order to get access to the full text of your document with traditional publishing, someone would have to pay for that, and then you would receive royalties. With open access publishing, and you can see there's a $95 fee for that, everyone would have full access to your document. Something to consider there is, remember how I mentioned earlier that your document will also be going to eScholarship, which is an open access repository. So it might not be entirely necessary for you to pay that $95 fee to have it open access in ProQuest as well, but you may want that, so that's completely up to you. So in the IR publishing options, this is about eScholarship. And basically your choices here are about embargoing or delaying the release of your document. So you can say, yes, I want my work immediately available, or no, I have patents pending or some other reason why I want to delay the release of my dissertation. And we will match this as far as the embargo in ProQuest. So you can either say, yes, I want it available, or no. And then you have the option between 6 months, 1 year, or 2 years. You are permitted to request up to 5 years. You would just put a note here to the administrator. And then if you did want anything beyond 2 years, we would contact you and just ask for some additional information about why that extended delay is necessary. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, you do have the option to apply a Creative Commons license to your document. So I believe there are 6 different licenses there that you can read through that information and decide if that's something that would be beneficial for you. It can be useful if you want your work to be easily distributed or built upon by others. The PDF section is where you will upload your dissertation, and that needs to be uploaded as one PDF document. You'll see below that is where you will upload any copyright permission documents that you have determined are necessary for your dissertation. The supplemental files section is where you can upload additional material that either maybe doesn't need to be part of the dissertation itself, or perhaps it can't be part of the dissertation itself. So if you have music or video files that you'd like to upload there, or you have pages of surveys or coding that you'd like to include there, you're welcome to do that. And it will follow your document to the different places that it's going to end up. So it will accompany your document in ProQuest and in eScholarship. You have the option to have ProQuest assist you in registering the copyright of your dissertation. This is not required, it's entirely optional, so it's up to you to determine if that's something that you want to do. It can be helpful if someone were to use your work without your permission. This would give you a little bit of additional legal recourse. Like I said, ProQuest can help you with that for a fee. You can register the copyright on your own, or you don't have to do it at all. You can also order copies of your dissertation through ProQuest. No hard copies are required by the graduate division. The official version of your dissertation is the electronic version. We do not require any hard copies, but if your department requires a hard copy, or you just want to have some hard copies, you're welcome to order those through ProQuest. You can also make copies however you choose to do that. It does not have to be through ProQuest. So if you want to make copies at Printing and Reprographics on campus or any other place, you're welcome to do that. So the last step here is to actually click submit. And I know that sounds a little bit scary at this point when you're just submitting your draft. You don't want it to be the final version. Don't worry about that. You actually can't submit your document to ProQuest for publishing. We have to do that. All that submit button is doing is sending us an email letting us know that you've uploaded. If you don't click that submit button, then we don't get an email and we have no idea that you've uploaded or submitted a revision. So please, it's very important to click that submit button. So talking a little bit about deadline dates, you can find the deadline dates on our website, on our graduation procedures page. We also have what we call our in-between deadlines, which are also listed on that page there. Between two quarters, there's always a little bit of time. So there's some time after one quarter ends, but before the next quarter begins. And we call those our in-between deadlines. If you finish during that time, it kind of gives you a little bit of extra time, and the amount of time just depends on which quarters we're talking about. But you would be a graduate of the upcoming quarter, but you would avoid having to enroll or pay fees for that quarter. So that's something to think about as well if you if it turns out you need to utilize that.
The format review, which is typically due 2 weeks prior to the final deadline. The final filing deadline, which is typically noon on the last business day of the quarter. And then if you're a master's student, in addition to those deadlines, there's the application for candidacy for master's degree, which is also due Friday of week 3.
So once you complete all the requirements, the degree will be posted to your transcript by the registrar's office, and that will take about a month after the conferral date of your degree. The diploma will be automatically mailed to you by the registrar's office, and that will take about 2 months after the conferral date. The diploma will be mailed to your permanent address in RWeb, so you want to make sure that you are keeping that updated to where you want your diploma mailed to you. The transcript will not automatically be sent. That is something that you'll have to order through RWeb if you do want that. And I believe there is an option where you can say, hold the transcript, wait to send it until the degree is posted to my transcript. As far as your RWeb and RMAL, you will continue to have access to those resources indefinitely. And like I said, the transcript and diploma are handled by the registrar's office. So there's some helpful links down there if you do have questions about those documents. So on behalf of Trina, Jessica, and I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to attend this workshop. Please feel free to contact us if you have any questions. We're here to help you through this process. And at this point, I will open it up to any questions anyone has. Thank you.